What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we're going to be doing a quick review on a pretty unique firearm that we've had in testing for the past couple of weeks. We're going to be going over the Pivot by Trailblazer Firearms. Now, Trailblazer Firearms is known for some interesting guns. They made the Life Card, which we previously reviewed. I saw this gun on Sutra's channel, as I said in the first shots, and I was actually pretty interested, so I went out and contacted them and asked them for a review. And I was obviously surprised that they not only responded to me, but sent me one immediately. And the reason for that is, guys who are not in the industry don't know this, but industry people don't always like me because I happen to say exactly what happens to the gun in the review. I don't sign any paperwork or anything like that to guarantee a full review. I receive the gun and I test it and I show you exactly what the gun does. And the reason for that is because I don't want anybody to buy a firearm for self-defense and then not be able to defend themselves, and that's on me. I don't ever want that to happen, so I put it on you and I let you guys watch the videos and try to figure out for yourself whether or not the gun is right for you. And we're gonna do that again today with the Pivot gun. So the Pivot gun is weird and interesting and unique, and I obviously like that from an engineering standpoint as well. I'm a big fan of unique stuff like the Alien, or even like the Life Card. The Life Card is not the most effective gun in the world, but it is really interesting and fun. And so is the Trailblazer Firearms Pivot gun. Now, where the Pivot gun separates itself from a lot of those guns is that this thing, I do believe, could actually be used in a self-defense situation relatively effectively, and we're gonna explain why here in a little bit. But before I do that, I want to mention who supports us. So I want to mention my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much. You guys are the biggest support of the channel, and we appreciate you guys. If you want to support the content, just please go in the link and sign up. Also on that link is a link to a local shelter named Iowa. It's the YSS. Those kids could really use your help, so please go down there and donate. Now, the Pivot gun is, at its heart, a 16-inch barreled PCC pistol caliber carbine that takes Glock magazines that fires a 9mm cartridge. On top of that, it runs a blowback system very similar to a lot of the other very famous pistol caliber carbines, like the CZ Scorpion, for example. And this gun, however, has a unique twist, as you can imagine, and that is that it pivots around. And the reason for that, in my personal opinion, was not told to me by Trailblazer, they didn't give me any information. I just assume that this is a response to the pistol brace ban. And because people can't get short 9mm carbines anymore, they have to go to longer and longer guns. And any pistol caliber carbine, that's not really where you want to be unless you want to be competing and stuff like that. Usually these things are popular because they're effective in short barrels, or people just want a short, light, concealable, capable firearm. They want something they can stow in a bag, for example. They want something they can put under a seat, maybe hide in a boat. Whatever the situation may be, it's nice that a gun is portable, and there's a lot of unique ways and interesting ways guns do that, and this is one of those. So the gun itself has a locking mechanism right here. All you do is push that down and you flip it backward. I'm trying to do it slow enough so you guys can see it on camera. It's a lot easier to do fast, actually. And then when you want to open it up, you just open it up like that. It has a retractable stock here that you can pull without unlocking, and then it has a locking tab on there that you push when you want to put the stock away. Now, one of the first big cons of the gun is that the stock is relatively flimsy. Now, this is a Generation 1, and maybe they will update that at some point. It is comfortable, it is very lightweight and very concealable, but it is a little bit flimsy, and I did on one occasion push it hard enough, the stock did collapse. Now, when the stock collapsed all the way, the gun is still usable. It doesn't take it out of the fight or anything like that, but it is kind of a pain in the ass. The pivot mechanism, we also had a couple times the gun would overrun it, although it doesn't do it when you're going slow, but if you're going really, really fast, sometimes it can overrun and then you got to slam it backward. And now that could be an issue in deployment. We have a ambi safety here, which is very nice. We have a flat face gold trigger, which looks very cool. We have a very small grip there, and that is for concealability as well. However, that is just a little bit uncomfortable because it's more of it's not a rifle grip like you would think. It's actually more of like maybe a Glock 26 grip. You can see here with a full firing grip, my pinky does not fit on the gun. However, if you take the magazine out that is hidden in the stock, it gives you just a little bit more lip, but you can also use any standard Glock magazine from 15 all the way up to whatever they go up to. The gun itself is a blowback operation, and it was very reliable through the testing. Nick shot this, Dalton shot this, my wife shot this, and I shot this. And all four of us liked it more than we thought we would. This was like one of the guns in testing we didn't think we were gonna like, because at the time we had the Tombstone, which did not favor very well, and several other guns. And it's really interesting, this I initially wrote off as just a gimmick, actually performed really well. Not only was it 100% reliable with 115 and 124 grain ammo, but it was actually pretty fast and accurate as well. About the same, a little bit less recoil, I would say, than your standard CZ Scorpion or something like that. Very light shooting gun, especially for the weight that it is. And the trigger is a little bit long on the reset, but the break in itself is actually pretty good, which we'll show you right here. So it's a little bit long, don't get me wrong, but in actual action, it feels really good. And it's got a really hard reset on it, so it wants to push your finger out, which is why in the footage you can see we're actually shooting pretty fast, even though the trigger travel is fairly long. It has an M-LOK rail up front with a Picatinny rail spot. We have a threaded barrel, and then it doesn't have any lockback on the magazines, or at least I didn't have any lockback on the magazines, but that is not that big of a deal because even though you don't have a paddle to push, the front charging handle is super easy to use, very similar or even easier in my opinion than an MP5. You take it, lock it back to the rear, and when you want to use it, you just slam it forward, or if you pop a new magazine in, you just rack it kind of like a Tavor or something like that. So it is really easy to use, and it's a little more ergonomic than I expected. At the bottom here, we also have M-LOK slots, although for me personally, I probably wouldn't put anything on this gun other than what you see here. And the reason for that is, again, the whole point of the gun is to be concealable. Now, the gun, people were thinking a gun is unsafe. It actually won't flip or fold unless the bolt is locked back to the rear and there's a magazine, there's no magazine in the magazine well. So when you flip it back, you can see that there's no accessories, it's super thin. Like this would be really easy to conceal in a bag or whatever you're gonna put it in, much more so than a standard PCC. Now, this is not going to replace like getting a gun out into the fight very quickly in my opinion, but it will replace like putting an upper or lower together, like I said, in a first shot. So a lot of times in order to get a gun smaller, if you want a full-size AR, you just take the upper and lower apart, and I think that this in an emergency would be faster. Instead of trying to use the push pins, I have to just push this in, flip it out, load the magazine, rack the gun, and you're already ready to go. That's actually a fairly fast system considering I haven't practiced that all that much. And if I put a lot of practice into it, you could probably get it a lot faster. Now there are other guns that like fold, and we do have the Smith & Wesson folding carbine, and we're not gonna do a direct comparison of that because I would consider them in different price tiers. The Smith & Wesson is $700, whereas the big downside of this is $1,700. Now the advantage to this is that it's gonna look better. This doesn't look cheap in person at all. It actually looks pretty high quality. All the parts feel good, and they actually are very smooth and easy to operate by comparison to something like a Kel-Tec Sub 2000. Now the Kel-Tec Sub 2000 though, its big advantage is that it's $500. Its big disadvantage is it's made out of melted beer cans, and it doesn't really work all that well in my personal experience. Now, Kel-Tec has a lot of fans. The Sub 2000 has a ton of fans. And now, I don't want to piss all you guys off, but I have had two of those guns, and neither one of them work great. Neither one of them were awesome to shoot. And a gun that folds is awesome, but in a modern day setting, a gun that can't accept an optic kind of sucks. The Kel-Tec Sub 2000 folds over and you have to use like an offset optics mount, which is pretty stupid in my personal opinion, whereas the Pivot achieves the same goal with a standard optic on it. And an optic certainly is a force multiplier, and I prefer an optic in my rifle, and anyone that has shot in the last 20 years with an optic will know it's just a little bit easier to use. So that's a big advantage. The stock was comfortable, and what I really liked about the gun was the shooting experience overall. It was actually really fun. It reminded me of just a standard pistol caliber carbine, and if you don't like the folding thing but you like how it looks, the gun shoots really well, and you don't ever have to fold it if you want. You just keep it in this configuration and use it for however long you want, and when people show up to your house and you want to show something off, you can flip the gun around and look all cool, and then you can go back to having a standard decent self-defense system. And if you're never going to flip it, then you can put a light and a red dot and whatever else you want to put on there, an EOTech with a riser, or, you know, whatever you want to do. But I would recommend, if you're going to buy the gun, I'd probably use it for what it's intended for, because if you're not going to fold it and keep it somewhere small, you're probably better off with like an MPX or something like that from SIG, or an MP5. But that being said, it's a cooler gun than I expected. It's just very expensive, and that's where we get into the real problems with guns like this, is that it is unique, it is new, and those R&D costs do cost. And the fact is that if you come out with a new fun design, it's usually going to be more expensive than the old standbys, and it's probably not going to offer much else other than the fun pivot thing. So is it an awesome gun? Yes. Is it worth the money? That's really up to you. But again, for an MSRP of $1,700, you're getting a decent amount of gun. But if it were me and I had to pick one PCC for self-defense and I had $1,700, I'm probably getting a CMMG Banshee or a Scorpion, because I don't require it to fold, but I already have those guns already, so a gun that folds is kind of cool. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please help out your local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.